all 7 areas of life are impacted by sustainable fair exchange and authenticity. In all probability, you've heard of the term sustainable fair exchange. This is a absolutely essential component of the mastery of life. I mean, in every relationship you have, whether it is at home, with yourself, with your spouse, with your children, with your loved ones, your parents, your social interactions, your employees, your customers, the people you work for, possibly, your vendors. I mean, I could go on and on. Almost every area of your life is affected by relationship dynamics and transactions. And unless you have sustainable fair exchange with them, the probability of mastering and maximizing your potential in life goes down. Because anytime you try to get something for nothing or give something for nothing, others or yourself will be disincentivized to continue. And so transactions will be short-lived. And anything that's short-lived, that is immediate gratifying, is not as empowering as long-term vision. People that have a longer-term vision and longer-term relationships tend to have more stability than people who don't. So I'd like to talk about how to maximize our sustainability and fair exchange and its impact on all areas of our life. See, I divide life into 7 areas: our spiritual quest, our intellectual or mental development and quest, our business or vocational quest, our financial independence quest, our relationship and familial quest, our social leadership quest, and our physical well-being. So I'd like to address how does sustainable fair exchange help all those. So we'll start with the mental. When you are exaggerating yourself and looking down on somebody, thinking that you're superior and they're inferior, and possibly minimizing them and exaggerating you, you tend to awaken inside you a narcissistic persona, the thing that thinks, well, I deserve more than you, and my opinions are better than yours, and I'm superior to you, a superiority complex. When you do, you tend to think what's in it for me, but you don't think of what's in it for them. You devalue them and overvalue you. When you do, you end up, if you're in business, that means you're not caring and listening to the customer. Or if you're in your mental faculties, that means you have noise in the brain and you're inauthentic. Anytime you puff yourself up and exaggerate yourself, you have an inauthentic persona. And anytime you minimize yourself, you have an inauthentic persona. It's when you're being yourself that you have an authenticity. So if you puff yourself up and minimize them and put them in the pit and exaggerate you on the pedestal, you've lost your identity. And anytime you infatuate with you and minimize them or resent them, they occupy and you occupy your space and time in your mind, and it distracts you and you have brain noise. So your mental faculty is not clear-minded. It's noisy, it's got static, it's got emotions, it's inauthentic, it's unstable. And when you try to get something for nothing or try to give something for nothing, you end up with a narcissistic pride or altruistic shame. And so the pride and shame is not a clear consciousness. So your mental faculties are clouded, they're not clear, they're not stable, they're not inspired whenever you are exaggerating you and minimizing others, or exaggerating them and minimizing you. When you minimize yourself and exaggerate them, you're altruistic, you try to give something for nothing, you're out of fair exchange. So anytime you're out of fair exchange and you try to get or give something for nothing, narcissistic or altruistically, you automatically have noise in the brain. So from a brain function, the static in the brain, the noise in the brain, the instabilities in the brain, the preoccupation, when you're highly infatuated with somebody or highly resentful to somebody, it's hard to sleep at night. Your sleep is affected, your brain function is diminished, and you're in your amygdala, which is not the place where the executive function is, where you're most ordered and governed. So from a mental perspective, it's important to have a sustainable fair exchange and to see people that reflectively and see them as equal to you. Because if you put them on pedestals of pitch, you're not going to be yourself and you're going to have all the noise. Now, from a business perspective, if you are puffing yourself up and thinking you're superior to your customer and don't meet their needs, they don't buy, which humbles you. And if you think you're superior to your employees and you don't meet their needs, they'll create a union to counterbalance you, to get things back in balance. The symptoms of business are feedback mechanisms, just like the symptoms of your brain and mind are feedback mechanisms to let you know when you're not authentic and not in sustainable fair exchange. And you're either exaggerating or minimizing yourself with narcissistic or altruistic behaviors. So in business, if you exaggerate yourself, you don't meet the customer's needs or the employee's needs, which humble you. And if you're altruistic and you exaggerate your customers or your employees, you'll have anarchy in your business and you'll have a lack of profits in your business with your customers. So you won't want to continue to business if you're minimizing yourself altruistically, and they won't want to do business with you if you're narcissistically exaggerating yourself and trying to get something for nothing. So what nature does is create symptoms in your business and to bring homeostasis back to your authentic self where you have sustainable fair exchange. So all the symptoms in your mind and your brain and all the symptoms in your physiology for that matter, because your brain and with its autonomics and epigenetics is affecting your body, all those symptoms are feedback mechanisms to get you to be authentic, to not exaggerate or minimize yourself, to not judge people, and to love people and to have reflective awareness. When it comes to finances, if you exaggerate yourself and get emotionally exuberant and get cocky and extroverted and think you deserve more, and you start borrowing other people's money and getting over leveraged, and you buy when the market is skyrocketing and you get elated, then you end up getting humbled, and you eventually have margin calls and decline in returns. That's why Warren Buffett says, until you can manage emotions, don't expect to manage money. So there you're trying to get something for nothing. You're trying to use other people's money to get you extra money, and you get a little bit on the greedy side. And that eventually humbles you and catches you. Or if you minimize yourself and you're at the bottom and you're basically in fear, and now what you'll do is you'll sell out at the bottom because you're frightened of losing more, and you'll let your emotions run you. So if you exaggerate yourself or minimize yourself and don't have fair exchange with the company and the employees and also the buyers, the customers again in the business, when you're buying company stocks or real estate for that matter, again, when you have emotions and you're unstable like that, you're foolish usually in your behavior and you're not able to maximize your financial position in life. But if you're in your executive function, you're thinking long term, you're more neutral, you're more fair, you try to have a sustainable, fair exchange, you'll have a lasting relationship with money. There's a gentleman here that I've very close friend here that lives on the ship that I live on that says the number one rule that he has in all transactions, and he's a very wealthy man, is to make sure it's a sustainable, fair exchange with the people that he's doing business with. He says that's the one that allows you to have a reputation, to build a brand, and to eventually make great fortunes. In the next area is relationships. If you think you're superior to the person that you're in relationship with and talk down to them and not meet their needs and think that you're more important than them, eventually they might surprise you by having an affair or divorcing you, which will cut your economics down, affect your business, distract your mind. So it's wiser to communicate what you value in terms of what they value, and you won't do that if you devalue what they value and you overvalue what you value. So taking the time to see how whatever they're dedicated to is helping you fulfill what you're dedicated to, and seeing how what's highest on their value is helping you fulfill what's highest on yours, and vice versa, that increases the probability of having a transaction that's sustainable and fair exchanged and allows you to have a long-term relationship. There's an equity theory that's keeping an eye on it, and everybody inside is keeping an eye on what they've exchanged with people. And if they feel that you owe them something, they retain it, that information in their mind. A woman's memory is more powerful than any Intel chips. They'll remember everything. Of course, men do too. So they basically remember anything that wasn't a fair exchange, and they'll store that in their subconscious mind and download it on you when you don't have a fair exchange to get you back into fair exchange. So it's just trying to get you to be authentic. People want to be in relationship with who they are, and you want to be loved for who you are. And so authenticity and sustainable fair exchange is the key in relationships. It's the key in finance, the key in business, it's the key in your brain. And when it comes to social life, even though you may want to wake up your leader, it's when you live by your highest priorities, you're most objective, you're most walking your talk, you're most uh, authentic in your expression. It's in that state that you actually have the most powerful social leadership position. In that case, you're capable of doing something really extraordinary as a leader and guide people. And in the process of doing that, you automatically draw and magnetize charismatically people to you. And in the process of doing that, you lead. And the question is when you're living by your highest values, you're more focused on what it is that's meaningful, and you'll be more in the leadership position. But leadership position is really, and the charismatic and magnetic description of people that are in the leadership position are people who are automatically living congruently with their highest value and are walking their talk. And that's where they're most authentic, and that's where they have the most sustainable fair exchange. They are able to communicate what they value in terms of others. So, as a leader, if you want to actually have a social influence, it's caring enough to take what's inspiring to you and what's most important to you and communicate it in a way that meets the needs of others. On social media, if you go out there and you share a message on there, when I share a message, it meets people's needs, the numbers grow. When I don't, they don't. It's that simple. So if I am caring enough to communicate in my values in terms of their values, I have an audience and I have an influence and you make a difference. So the same principle again. But if you exaggerate yourself and think you know more about what they need and it doesn't meet a need, it humbles you. Or if you end up doing something that is inspiring to people, but it doesn't mean anything to you, you don't want to do it. So you have to find a balance between you and them, the self and other, the sustainable fair exchange, win-win, as the key says, in order to have that sustainable. And on your physical health, whenever you have exaggerate yourself with narcissism, your glucose level goes up in the brain because of glucagon. And when you minimize yourself, insulin comes in and it goes down. So your blood sugar, your blood pressure, your physiology, your autonomic nervous system is a feedback system with symptoms to let you know whenever you're not authentic and in sustainable fair exchange. So you're creating the illness, if you will, as a feedback to let you know when you're not authentic and not in a fair exchange with people that you care about in these areas of your life. And so all 7 areas of life are impacted by sustainable fair exchange and authenticity. And again, on the last one is your inspiration, your spiritual direction. When you are authentic, when you're in sustainable fair exchange, you have the highest degree of gratitude because you can't wait to get up and be of service. People can't wait to get it. And your brain is clear. You have a no clouded mind. You're inspired. You're doing what you love. You were spontaneously inspired from within. You're now fulfilling your spiritual mission because your highest value is your teleological mission. So you empower literally all 7 areas of your life to the degree that you live by priority, communicate your highest priority in terms of other people's priority, do it in not a narcissistic or altruistic manner, trying to get something for nothing or give something for nothing, but giving a sustainable fair exchange. We're giving something for something that's fair. When you do, you have the least amount of noise in the brain, the most amount of business, the most amount of wealth production, the greatest relationship endurance and win-win, the greatest leadership skills. You have physiological wellness instead of illness, and you're inspired and you're on your mission. So sustainable fair exchange can empower all 7 areas of your life. And that's why I wanted to take a moment to talk about that. In the Breakthrough Experience program, which I've been teaching now for 35 years almost, I go in there and I teach people how to identify what their highest value is, how to live according to their highest value, how to have more adaptability and resilience and objectivity, and therefore come from a state of authenticity, walking your talk with integration, and how to communicate and do linkings of values and communicate what you value in terms of other people's values so you can empower all those areas. How to dissolve the noise in the brain so you have a clear consciousness. How to maximize the business transactions so there's sustainable fair exchange with the people you work with and the people you work for, the customer. How to have more wealth potential. And just that in itself in Breakthrough is worth the class. And then also how to communicate effectively in relationship, because you're going to be in relations with people all over your life. And if you know how to communicate your values in terms of theirs in a sustainable, fair exchange way, you're definitely going to go farther in life. And if you can do that in the social circles and grow your leadership and leverage yourself now in whatever way, through public speaking possibly or social media, this gives you a competitive advantage and comparative advantage. And that will help you and have more wellness quotient and have you have more vitality in life. Because when you're living by your highest values and being authentic, you have the most energy and vitality and health and well-being, and you're most magnetically attractive. And you'll be inspired. and you'll feel like you're on a mission. And those that have an inspired mission literally are their spiritual path. Your spiritual path may or may not be religious and institutionally religious. It may be whatever inspires you. In my case, my spiritual path is teaching. But all 7 areas of your life are impacted by it. And that's why I tell people to come to the breakthrough experience so they can empower that. That's been my dream since I was 18, to help people empower all 7 areas of life. That's what I wanted for myself. That's what I wanted for my students. I didn't want them to just be lopsided and have a wheel that's flat, you might say, but have all 7 areas of their life empowered to do original ideas and bring them to the world, and to grow whatever vocational business that's meaningful to them. And that may be raising a family, because that's a business. Your customer may be your spouse, and you're having children as your products. But whatever it is in business, to be able to grow that, I want people to be able to be prosperous in their life. I want them to be able to have a loving relationship and have social influence and physically fit and be inspired. And I believe that that's what everybody's looking for in a relationship. They're looking for somebody that's physically fit, inspired by what they're doing, and have some ambitions in life and goals in life, and somebody that's intelligent, and somebody that's resourceful, and somebody that loves them, and somebody that's socially influential. You're looking for the best package possible. And that's why in the breakthrough experience, I teach you how to awaken those powers, have sustainable fair exchange, so you can empower all areas of your life. And I'm certain that it can do it. I've seen it. I've worked with it. I know its impact, and I've seen thousands of people with their feedback and comments back from the program, the impact it has. So come and join me at the breakthrough experience so you can have more sustainable fair exchange and live more authentically with less noise in the brain, more productivity at work, more income and financial empowerment, more stable relationships, more social influence, more physically well and quotient and energized and inspired. And I know that if you do that, I know you'll be able to say thank you to yourself and look in the mirror and say, hey, amazing individual you are. And it all comes from learning how to be authentic. The magnificence of who you are is far greater than any of the fantasies you'll impose on yourself. So don't exaggerate or minimize yourself. Don't exaggerate or minimize others. Bring reflective awareness into operation. And that's why I tell people to come to the breakthrough experience. I show them how to do this so they can empower all areas of their life.